You don't feel weak because you are weak. You feel weak because you've been reacting instead of deciding. This audiobook is not about motivation. It's not about confidence. It's about control. Mental strength is not built when life is easy. It is built in moments like this, when you feel tired, when you feel unsure, when you feel like quitting. You have a choice. You always do. And in the next 90 minutes, you will learn how to make that choice on command. No hype, no emotion, just discipline. That's the key. Chapter 1. Stop waiting to feel strong. Strength is not a feeling. Say that again. Strength is not a feeling. It is a decision made under pressure, made when you don't feel ready, made when your emotions are telling you to stop. Most people get this backwards. They sit around waiting to feel confident, waiting to feel motivated, waiting to feel strong. That wait never ends, because confidence does not come before action. Confidence comes from action, and strength is built the same way. You don't wake up strong. You act strong, and then strength follows. That's the key. Right now, you probably tell yourself a familiar lie. I'll start when I feel better. I'll move when I feel ready. I'll push when I feel confident. That lie keeps you weak, because feelings are unreliable. They change with sleep, with food, with mood, with stress, with other people's opinions. If your strength depends on how you feel, you will never be consistent. You have a choice. You always do. You can let your emotions lead, or you can decide to lead yourself. That's the difference between people who break and people who build. Here is the truth most people avoid. Weakness is not the problem. Avoidance is. Feeling tired is normal. Feeling scared is human. Feeling unsure is expected. But waiting for those feelings to disappear before you act, that's self-sabotage. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. It's not about confidence. It's about consistency. It's not about how you feel. It's about what you do anyway. You don't need their permission. Not your bosses, not your families, not your friends, not even your own emotions. You don't need permission to take the next step. You need standards. Let's break this down clearly. Every moment of your life falls into one of two categories: comfort or growth. And growth always feels uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is not a warning sign. It's the signal that you're doing it right. When your muscles burn, they're growing. When your lungs struggle, they're adapting. When your mind resists, it's being trained. But most people misread discomfort as danger, so they retreat, they delay, they distract themselves. And they call it self-care. Real self-care is discipline. Real self-respect is follow-through. Strength doesn't come from avoiding discomfort. It comes from staying inside it longer than last time. That's the key. Here's a real-world example. Two people wake up tired. Same exhaustion, same resistance. One says, "I'll rest today." The other says, "I'll do what I can." One waits for strength. The other creates it. 6 months later, their lives look completely different. Not because one felt better, but because one acted anyway. You don't need perfect energy. You need minimum standards. Show up tired. Work while unsure. Move even when you don't feel like it. That is how strength is built. You train your body in the gym. You train your mind through follow-through. Every time you act without feeling ready, you send your brain a message. I am in control. I decide. I move first. And the brain adapts. Confidence grows after proof. Strength grows after repetition. Waiting kills momentum. Action creates it. You have a choice. Wait for a feeling or build a habit. One keeps you stuck. The other changes your identity. Now, let's talk about what you must stop doing. Stop checking how you feel before acting. Stop negotiating with resistance. Stop asking yourself, do I feel like it? That question weakens you. Replace it with this. What does discipline require right now? That question builds you. Discipline doesn't ask for permission, it gives commands. Wake up, move, focus, finish. Not because you feel strong, but because you decided to be. This is where most people fail. They think strength is dramatic, they think it's loud, they think it's visible. It's not. Strength is quiet. It's boring. It's repetitive. It's doing the same correct thing, even when no one is watching, even when no one is clapping, even when you feel weak. Especially when you feel weak. Because weakness is the training ground. The moment you want to quit is the moment the work starts. That's the moment that counts. You don't rise to the level of motivation, you fall to the level of your discipline. And discipline is built through action, not intention. Say this to yourself. I don't wait to feel strong. I act and strength follows. I don't need permission. I have a choice. That repetition matters. Because your mind listens to what you repeat. If you repeat excuses, you train weakness. If you repeat action, you train strength. Every small decision is a vote for the person you're becoming. Miss one workout? Fine. Miss one day? Fine. But never miss the identity. Never tell yourself you are weak. Tell yourself you are training. That's the shift. You don't escape weakness, you use it. Weakness is where discipline proves itself. And now you understand the foundation. Strength is not something you wait for. It is something you build deliberately, daily, without emotion. You made the decision to stop waiting. Now you need to understand what weakness really is and what it is not. Because weakness isn't your enemy. Avoidance is. You stopped waiting for strength. Now it's time to redefine weakness itself. Chapter 2. Weakness is a signal, not an identity. Feeling weak does not mean you are weak. Say that again. Feeling weak does not mean you are weak. It means something is speaking to you. Weakness is feedback, not a verdict, not a label, not a life sentence. That's the key. Most people confuse a signal with an identity. They feel tired and say, I'm failing. They feel overwhelmed and say, I'm not built for this. They feel resistance and say, this isn't for me. That mistake costs years. Signals guide you. Labels trap you. And once you label yourself as weak, your behavior follows the label. You start acting small. You start lowering standards. You start excusing retreat. You have a choice. You always do. You can let your emotions lead, or you can decide to lead yourself. That's the difference between people who break and people who build. Here is the truth most people avoid. Weakness is not the problem. Avoidance is. Feeling tired is normal. Feeling scared is human. Feeling unsure is expected. But waiting for those feelings to disappear before you act, that's self-sabotage. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. It's not about confidence. It's about consistency. It's not about how you feel. It's about what you do anyway. You don't need their permission. Not your bosses, not your families, not your friends, not even your own emotions. You don't need permission to take the next step. You need standards. Let's break this down clearly.
Every moment of your life falls into one of two categories: comfort or growth. And growth always feels uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is not a warning sign, it's the signal that you're doing it right. When your muscles burn, they're growing. When your lungs struggle, they're adapting. When your mind resists, it's being trained. But most people misread discomfort as danger, so they retreat, they delay, they distract themselves. And they call it self-care. Real self-care is discipline. Real self-respect is follow-through. Strength doesn't come from avoiding discomfort. It comes from staying inside it longer than last time. That's the key. Here's a real-world example. Two people.
Chapter 3. The moment you feel weak is the moment you train. The moment you feel weak is not the moment to stop. It is the moment to train. Read that again. The moment you feel weak is the moment the training begins. That's the key. Most people treat weakness as a stop sign. Strong people treat it as a starting line. Because mental strength is not built when life is calm. It is forged when resistance appears. No resistance, no growth. Pressure is the gym. Say it again. Pressure is the gym. If you only act when things feel easy, you never train strength. You only maintain comfort. And comfort does not prepare you for pressure. It makes you fragile. You have a choice. You always do. You can avoid resistance, or you can engage it. Avoidance feels good in the moment, but it trains weakness. Engagement feels uncomfortable, but it trains control. That's the trade. Let's be clear about something uncomfortable. Weakness doesn't disappear when you run from it. It multiplies. Every time you avoid the hard conversation, you train fear. Every time you avoid the difficult task, you train procrastination. Every time you escape discomfort, you teach your mind that discomfort is dangerous. That lesson makes you weaker over time. It's not about fear, it's about discipline. Discipline steps towards resistance on purpose. That is the difference between people who break under pressure and people who become calm inside it. Here's how this works in real life. You sit down to work. Your mind feels heavy. Your focus drifts. Your body wants distraction. That discomfort is not random. It is the exact weight your mind needs to lift. But most people stand up and walk away. They check their phone, they scroll, they delay. They just skipped a workout. Pressure is the gym, and they left early. The disciplined person stays, not forever, not perfectly, just a little longer than yesterday. 5 more minutes, 1 more paragraph, 1 more rep, 1 more decision made without emotion. That's training. Mental strength is built in these micro moments, not in big speeches, not in hype, not in motivation, in staying, in engaging resistance instead of escaping it. That's the key. You don't need their permission to train, not your moods, not your comforts, not your fears. You decide when the set starts. Now here's where most people get confused. They think training means pushing at full intensity all the time. Wrong. Training means intentional exposure. You don't overload on day 1. You add weight gradually. Mental strength works the same way. You don't confront everything at once. You confront something. 1 task you're avoiding, 1 emotion you're running from, 1 discomfort you keep postponing. You face that. That is enough. Because the goal is not exhaustion. The goal is adaptation. And adaptation only happens under stress. Pressure is the gym. Let's talk about control. Control is not the absence of emotion. Control is acting without being ruled by emotion. Feeling weak does not remove your ability to act, it only tests it. You always have a choice. Act or avoid. And every time you choose action, you reclaim control. Every time you avoid, you hand control to discomfort. That's not strength, that's surrender. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Discipline does not ask, how do I feel? It asks, what's required? Required to move forward required to maintain standards, required to keep momentum. Now listen carefully. You do not train mental strength by eliminating weakness. You train it by meeting weakness head on. You let the feeling be there. You don't fight it. You don't dramatize it. You act anyway. That simple sequence rewires your brain. Weakness appears, action follows, control increases. Repeat that enough times and your identity changes. I am someone who moves under pressure. That identity is powerful. Here's a rule to live by. If you feel resistance, do not retreat. Reduce the task, not the standard. Don't quit the workout, lower the intensity. Don't abandon the project, work on it for 10 minutes. Don't avoid the conversation, start it with one sentence. Engagement beats avoidance every time. That's how you stay in the gym. Most people fail because they think strength is about dominance. It's not. It's about tolerance. Tolerating discomfort without reacting. Tolerating pressure without panic. Tolerating weakness without quitting. That tolerance is trained, and it's trained exactly where you are right now. Not later, not tomorrow, now. Pressure is not your enemy. It is your equipment. Use it. When your heart races, stay. When your mind resists, stay. When quitting feels attractive, stay. Stay just long enough to prove something to yourself. You don't need their permission to prove it. This is between you and you. And every time you stay, you get stronger. Not louder, not more confident, stronger. Quietly. That's the key. This chapter demands something practical from you. Identify one area you've been avoiding. One. Name it. Now decide the smallest possible action that counts as engagement. Do that today. Not perfectly, not emotionally, just deliberately. Because mental strength is not built by thinking about pressure. It's built by using it. You don't escape the gym, you train in it. And life will keep providing weight. You've learned that the moment you feel weak is the moment to train. But training without clarity can turn into chaos. You must know how to engage pressure without burning out. That requires one critical skill: acceptance. You don't fight reality, you use it. You've learned to stay inside pressure, now you must learn to stop arguing with it. Chapter 4. Stop arguing with reality. Reality does not negotiate. Reality does not care how you feel. Reality does not adjust to your expectations. And the moment you stop arguing with it, you regain power. That's the key. Most people are exhausted not because life is hard. They're exhausted because they're fighting what already is. They argue with facts. They resist circumstances. They replay how things should have gone. That resistance drains mental energy. Not the work, not the pressure, the resistance. You have a choice. You always do. You can avoid energy, wishing things were different, or you can use energy dealing with what's in front of you. One weakens you, the other strengthens you. Acceptance is power. Say it again. Acceptance is power. Now understand this clearly. Acceptance does not mean approval. It does not mean giving up. It does not mean liking the situation. It means acknowledging reality as it is so you can act effectively. You cannot change what you refuse to accept. That's the trap. People think resistance equals strength. It doesn't. It equals denial. And denial delays action. Here's how this plays out in real life. You didn't get the result you wanted. You made a mistake. Someone disappointed you. Something ended. Instead of adjusting, you argue internally. This shouldn't have happened. This isn't fair. I deserve better. Those thoughts feel justified, but they're expensive. They burn focus. They burn clarity. They burn time. And they don't change reality. Acceptance does. Because once you accept what is, you can ask a powerful question. What's the next move? That question restores control. It's not about injustice, it's about discipline. Discipline doesn't debate reality, it uses it. Strong people don't waste strength on arguments they can't win. They redirect it into action. That's the key. Let's be precise. Emotional resistance sounds like this. I shouldn't feel this way. This shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't be here. Reality answers with silence.
And while you're arguing, time moves forward without you. Acceptance sounds like this. This is where I am. This is what happened. This is what I have to work with. No drama, no judgment, just facts. Facts create leverage. You don't need their permission to accept reality. Not society's, not your ego's, not your past's. You decide to stop arguing. And when you do, something shifts. Your mind clears, your energy returns, your options expand, because you're no longer fighting shadows. Acceptance is power. Here's another example. You're tired. You keep telling yourself you shouldn't be tired, so you push emotionally. You get sloppy, you burn out. Acceptance says, I'm tired, so I'll adjust. Adjust pace, adjust expectations, adjust recovery. That's not weakness, that's intelligence. It's not about fatigue, it's about discipline. Discipline adapts without complaining. Now let's address a dangerous misunderstanding. People think acceptance kills ambition. It doesn't. It removes friction. You stop wasting effort on denial and redirect it into execution. Think about it. If you're in traffic and you argue with it, you stay stuck. If you accept it, you choose a route, make a call, or use the time. Same situation, different response. One drains you, the other empowers you. You have a choice. Fight reality or work with it. Here's a rule you must adopt. When something happens, label it neutral before emotional. This happened. Period. No story, no meaning, no judgment. Meaning comes later, after action. This discipline keeps you sharp under pressure, because pressure is...
Chapter 5. Discipline works even when motivation is dead. Motivation is unreliable. Say it plainly. Motivation is unreliable. It shows up late. It leaves early. It disappears the moment things get uncomfortable. Discipline does not. That's the key. Discipline is mechanical. It does not negotiate. It does not ask how you feel. It executes the standard. Most people build their lives on motivation. They wait for energy. They wait for excitement. They wait for the spark. And when the spark dies, so does progress. You have a choice. You always do. You can build a system that requires feelings, or a system that functions without them. One collapses under pressure. The other compounds. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. Repeat it. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. That sentence should calm you because it removes pressure. You no longer have to be inspired. You no longer have to be confident. You no longer have to feel ready. You just have to follow the process. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is operational. Emotion fluctuates. Operations run. That's the difference. Here's a real-world example. Two people commit to the same habit, same goal, same timeline. One waits to feel motivated. They show up when the mood is right. They skip when it's not. The other shows up tired. They show up bored. They show up irritated. 6 weeks later, the gap is obvious. Not because one was stronger, but because one was consistent. Consistency is not exciting. It's effective. It's not about passion. It's about discipline. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. This chapter is where most people resist, because discipline sounds harsh, cold, restrictive. It's not. Discipline is freedom, because when behavior is decided in advance, you stop arguing with yourself. No debates, no delays, no emotional bargaining. You execute. That saves mental energy. Most exhaustion is not physical. It's decision fatigue. What should I do today? Should I rest or push? Am I in the mood? Those questions drain you. Discipline answers them ahead of time. This is what we do. Period. That's the key. Let's get practical. If motivation is dead, and it will be, what do? You fall back on rules. Rules remove emotion. Wake time, work block, training slot, shutdown ritual. You don't decide daily. You decide once. That's strength. You don't need their permission to create rules for your life. Not your friends, not your families, not your cultures. You are allowed to be structured. Structure does not limit you. It protects you. When you are tired, structure carries you. When you are distracted, structure focuses you. When you are weak, structure holds you. Motivation never does that. Motivation asks for perfect conditions. Discipline creates progress in imperfect ones. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. Now listen carefully. Discipline is not intensity. It's reliability. You don't need to do everything. You need to do the right things, consistently. On bad days, lower intensity. Never lower standards. That's the rule. If you can't run, walk. If you can't write a page, write a paragraph. If you can't train hard, train light. But do not skip. Skipping trains inconsistency. Consistency trains identity. Identity is the real prize. You don't become disciplined by feeling disciplined. You become disciplined by acting disciplined, especially when motivation is dead. That's the key. Let's expose another lie. People say, "I'll rest until motivation comes back." Motivation doesn't come back from rest. It comes back from momentum. Action precedes motivation. Always. You act first, motivation follows, not the other way around. If you wait for motivation, you starve momentum. If you act without motivation, you create it. This is not theory, it's mechanics. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. Now let's talk about tired days. Tired days are not exceptions, they are the norm. If your system only works on good days, you don't have a system, you have a fantasy. Strong people plan for tired days. They assume fatigue, they assume resistance, they assume boredom, and they build around it. Short sessions, clear checklists, non-negotiable minimums. Minimums matter. Your minimum standard is the floor you never fall below. 10 minutes, 1 page, 1 set, 1 task completed. That minimum keeps the chain unbroken, and unbroken chains build discipline. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Discipline is not loud, it's quiet. It doesn't announce itself, it just shows up, again and again and again. You don't need their permission to be boringly consistent. You need the courage to stop chasing excitement, because excitement fades, discipline compounds. That's the key. Here's a command for you. Write this down. Decide your non-negotiables, not goals, standards. What you do even when you don't feel like it. Wake time, movement, focused work, recovery. Keep it small, keep it clear, keep it consistent. Then stop renegotiating. Every time you renegotiate, you weaken the rule. Every time you follow through, you strengthen it. That's how discipline becomes automatic. And when discipline becomes automatic, you don't rely on willpower. Willpower is expensive. Systems are cheap. Build systems. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. Let that sentence become your anchor. When emotions spike, execute the system. When motivation dies, execute the system. When life gets loud, execute the system. You always have a choice. Follow feelings or follow standards. One leads to chaos, the other leads to control. You've accepted reality. Now you've built discipline that functions inside it. But discipline still needs direction, because action without clear commands turns into noise. You must learn how to speak to your mind so it obeys under pressure. You've built the engine. Now you must learn how to give orders. Chapter 6. Your mind obeys the last command. Your mind is not a democracy. It is a machine, and machines do not follow intentions. They follow instructions. That's the key. Most people think their mind should understand them. They
They think good intentions are enough. They think wanting change creates change. It doesn't. The brain obeys the last clear command, not the strongest emotion, not the best excuse, not the smartest plan. The last command. You have a choice. You always do. You can command your mind deliberately, or you can let random thoughts issue them for you. One creates control. The other creates chaos. Command your mind, or it commands you. Say it again. Command your mind, or it commands you. This is where real mental strength is built, not in silence, not in hope, but in self-direction. Let's expose a dangerous habit. Most people talk to themselves constantly and carelessly. I'm tired. I can't focus. This is too hard. I always mess this up. They think it's harmless. It's not. That is training. Every repeated phrase becomes an instruction. Your brain doesn't judge. It obeys. Negative self-talk is not emotional expression. It is unintentional programming. And once programmed, behavior follows. That's the trap. It's not about weakness. It's about discipline. Disciplined people speak to themselves on purpose. Undisciplined people let the noise run. You don't need their permission to take control of your inner voice, not your pasts, not your emotions, not society's. This is your responsibility. Let's get practical. Your mind is constantly asking one question. What do we do next? And whatever you answer, that's what happens. If you say, I can't, your body slows. If you say, this is hard, your focus scatters. If you say, I'll do it later, momentum dies. Those are commands. Unclear, weak, but still commands. Strong people replace commentary with instruction. Not I'm tired, but I move anyway. Not I'm overwhelmed, but one task at a time. Not I don't feel like it, but begin. Short, direct, actionable. That's the key. Commands work best when they are simple. Your mind is not inspired by speeches. It responds to clarity. Stand up, sit down, focus, breathe, begin. You don't argue. You don't explain. You instruct. That is how authority works. You have a choice. Let thoughts narrate or let commands lead. Narration weakens. Commands move.
Chapter 7. Build strength through boring repetition. Intensity is seductive. Consistency is effective. Most people chase intensity. They want the surge, the rush, the dramatic breakthrough. And when the excitement fades, so do they. That's the key. Mental strength is not built in explosive moments. It is built in boring repetition. Say it again. Boring, done daily, becomes unstoppable. You have a choice. You always do. You can chase intensity, or you can commit to consistency. One feels powerful for a moment. The other makes you powerful for life. Here's the truth people avoid. If something feels boring, it's probably working, because boredom means the ego is no longer entertained. And when the ego is quiet, discipline can operate. Strength grows through mundane actions repeated over time, not through heroic effort once in a while. It's not about passion, it's about discipline. Discipline shows up when there's nothing exciting to show. That's the difference. Let's look at why people fail. They overdo it on day one. Too much work, too much pressure, too many promises. They burn hot, they burn out. Then they quit. Not because they're weak, but because they misunderstood how strength is built. Strength is layered, slow, quiet. Repetition builds capacity. Intensity tests it. You test later, you build first. That's the key. Think about any skill you respect. Athletes don't train randomly. Writers don't write only when inspired. Leaders don't act only when motivated. They repeat fundamentals. Same drills, same routines, same standards, day after day. That repetition wires behavior. Behavior becomes identity. Identity becomes strength. Boring, done daily, becomes unstoppable. Now listen carefully. Repetition is not mindless, it is intentional sameness. You choose a small set of actions and you repeat them regardless of mood. Not perfectly, not dramatically, reliably. You don't need their permission to be repetitive. Not society's, not your friends, not your ego's. You need humility, because repetition requires humility. It requires accepting that progress is slow, that no one is watching, that there is no applause. That's where most people quit. They want evidence early, they want validation, but discipline doesn't perform, it compounds. That's the key. Here's a real-world example. Two people start the same habit. One goes all in, 2 hours a day, maximum effort, no days off. The other commits to 20 minutes, every day, no matter what. 3 weeks later, the first person is exhausted. They miss days, they feel guilty, they spiral. The second person barely notices the effort, but the habit is forming, the identity is shifting. 6 months later, the difference is undeniable. Not because of talent, because of repetition. Consistency beats intensity every time. Let's get practical. You must define your boring basics, not goals, not dreams, actions. What you will do daily, even when it feels pointless. Wake time, movement, focused work block, reflection. Small, clear, repeatable. Then you remove decision-making. No debate, no negotiation, you execute. That's discipline. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Discipline removes drama. Drama drains energy. Repetition builds strength. Here's a rule. If you miss a day, return the next day without emotion. No guilt, no punishment, no overcompensation. Emotion disrupts repetition. Consistency loves neutrality. Strong people are boring with their habits. They don't reinvent, they don't overthink, they repeat. And repetition builds resilience. Because when life gets chaotic, your boring habits stabilize you, they anchor you. You have a choice: react to chaos or rely on routine. Routine is strength on autopilot. That's the key. Let's address resistance. Your mind will tell you repetition is pointless, that you already know this, that you should do more. Ignore it. That voice is addicted to novelty. Novelty feels productive. Repetition actually is. The mind wants stimulation. Discipline wants results. Choose results. You don't need their permission to ignore boredom. You need commitment, because boredom is the price of mastery. Every expert you admire paid that price. They didn't chase excitement, they chased consistency, and consistency paid them back. Boring done daily becomes unstoppable. Say it again. Boring done daily becomes unstoppable. Now here's a critical shift. Stop measuring progress emotionally. How do I feel? How motivated am I? Those metrics lie. Measure behavior. Did you show up? Did you execute the standard? Did you repeat the action? That's the scoreboard. Strong people keep score on actions, not feelings. Feelings fluctuate. Actions accumulate. That's the key. You build mental strength the same way you build muscle. 1 rep doesn't matter. 1 session doesn't matter, but they add up. And one day you realize something changed. You don't panic as easily. You don't quit as quickly. You don't overreact. Not because you tried to be strong, but because repetition trained you. That's transformation, and it's quiet. Now let's lock this in with a command. Choose 3 boring actions you will repeat daily for the next 30 days. No expansion, no upgrades, no intensity increase, just repetition. Protect those actions fiercely. When life pushes back, you don't add more. You repeat the basics. That's discipline. That's strength. You've learned to stop waiting. You've learned to read weakness. You've learned to train under pressure. You've learned to accept reality. You've built discipline without motivation. You've learned to command your mind. And now you've embraced boring repetition. But repetition alone isn't enough. Because even disciplined people break down when emotions hijack their reactions. You must learn to not react, to pause, to hold, to choose your response. You've built the engine. Now you must learn to control it under stress. Chapter 8. Emotional control is a skill, not a personality. Calm is not a personality trait. It is a trained response. Say that again. Calm is trained. Strong people are not calm by nature. They are calm by practice. That's the key. Most people believe emotional control is something you're born with. You're either calm or you're not. You're just wired that way. That belief keeps people reactive for life. Reactivity is not destiny. It is conditioning. And anything conditioned can be reconditioned. You have a choice. You always do. You can let emotions run you, or you can train yourself to run them. One keeps you unstable. The other gives you control. You can train calm. Repeat it. You can train calm. Here's the truth most people avoid. Emotions are fast. Reactions are automatic. But automatic does not mean permanent. Every emotional reaction you have today was learned through repetition. Someone raised their voice. You reacted. Someone criticized you. You reacted. Stress showed up. You panicked. That pattern repeated, so it became default. But defaults can be overwritten. That's discipline. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Discipline slows reaction. Let's get something straight. Emotional control does not mean emotional suppression. You are not trying to feel nothing. You are learning to delay response. That delay is power. Between stimulus and response, there is a gap. In that gap lives choice. That's the key. Most people collapse the gap to zero. Something happens, they react instantly. Words fly, decisions are rushed, damage is done. Strong people widen the gap, not forever, not dramatically, just long enough to choose. You don't need their permission to pause, not the other person's, not the situation's. You decide. Now let's talk about how calm is trained. You do not train calm in calm moments. You train calm in minor stress, small irritations, delays, criticism, inconvenience. These are practice reps. Most people waste them. They snap at traffic. They get irritated by messages. They spiral over small problems. That's training too, training reactivity. Every reaction you allow becomes stronger. That's how habits are formed. But you can reverse it. You start with one rule. When emotion spikes, do nothing for 3 seconds. 3 seconds. Breathe. Observe. Say nothing. That pause interrupts the automatic response. It gives you leverage. You have a choice. React or respond. Responding requires discipline. Reacting requires none. That's why reacting is common, but common is weak. Strong people are uncommon. They pause. You can train calm. Here's another truth. Your nervous system learns through exposure. If you avoid emotional discomfort, you become fragile. If you expose yourself gradually, you become resilient. Avoidance makes emotions louder. Exposure makes them quieter. That's the key. So stop protecting yourself from every emotional trigger. Start training on them. Not by provoking chaos, but by handling what life already gives you. Annoyance? Train. Stress? Train. Pressure? Train. Stay still, stay silent, stay present. The body learns safety through repetition, and calm becomes default. This is not theory, it's biology. You don't need their permission to be emotionally disciplined, not your past's, not your temperaments. Temperament is not a prison, it's a starting point. Now let's deal with a dangerous lie. People say, that's just how I am. No, that's just how you've been trained. You trained impatience. You trained overreaction. You trained emotional leakage. But you can train restraint. You can train composure. You can train calm. It's not about anger, it's about discipline. Discipline of response. Strong people do not express everything they feel. They filter. Filtering is not dishonesty, it's mastery. You don't act on every impulse. You choose which impulses deserve action. That choice defines maturity. Here's a simple exercise. The next time something irritates you, don't fix it. Don't comment. Don't react. Just notice the urge. That urge will peak, then fade. When you survive that wave without reacting, your confidence grows. I can feel this and still choose. That belief is strength. Do this repeatedly and your baseline shifts. Calm becomes normal. That's the key. Now let's talk about identity. You are not an emotional person. You are a trained person. What you practice is what you become. Practice reacting, you become reactive. Practice pausing, you become composed. Practice silence, you become powerful. You don't need their permission to change how you respond. You need patience with the process, because training calm is slow, subtle, uncelebrated, but the payoff is massive. Decisions improve, relationships stabilize, focus sharpens, and most importantly, you stop sabotaging yourself in moments that matter. You have a choice: react now or dominate later. Emotional control is delayed gratification. You trade the release of reaction for the strength of restraint. That's discipline, and discipline always wins. You can train calm. Say it again. You can train calm. Now here's the command. Start viewing emotional triggers as training opportunities. Every irritation is a rep. Every delay is a rep. Every criticism is a rep. Don't waste reps. Train. You've built discipline. You've built repetition. You've learned to control your reactions. But there is still one addiction left. The addiction to relief. The desire to escape discomfort quickly. If you want real mental strength, you must break that addiction. You've learned to control emotion. Now you must learn to tolerate discomfort. Chapter 9. Stop seeking relief. Start building tolerance. Your biggest enemy is not pain. It's your need for relief. Say that again. Your biggest enemy is not pain. It's your need for relief. That's the key. Most people don't fail because things are too hard. They fail because they escape discomfort too quickly. The moment something feels uncomfortable, they reach for relief. A distraction, an excuse, a justification, an exit. That habit weakens you. Comfort-seeking trains fragility. Tolerance creates toughness. Repeat it. Tolerance creates toughness. You have a choice. You always do. You can seek relief, or you can build tolerance. One keeps you comfortable, the other makes you strong. Let's be honest, modern life is optimized for relief. Food on demand, entertainment on demand, validation on demand. The system trains you to escape discomfort instantly. And that training bleeds into everything. You escape hard work. You escape hard conversations. You escape hard emotions. Then you wonder why pressure breaks you. It's not about weakness, it's about conditioning. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Discipline delays relief. Strong people are not immune to discomfort. They are tolerant of it. They stay longer. That's the difference. Let's look at how tolerance is built. Not by eliminating discomfort, but by extending exposure. You don't double it, you don't dramatize it, you extend it slightly. 30 seconds longer, one more rep, one more minute of focus, one more honest sentence. That extension matters, because tolerance grows at the edge, the point where you want to stop, but don't. Pressure is not the enemy, your escape reflex is. You can train tolerance. Here's a real-world example. You're working, your focus fades, you feel restless. Most people stop immediately. They check their phone, they reset. That reset trains escape. The disciplined response is different. You stay for 5 more minutes, just 5. No pushing, no intensity, just presence. That 5 minutes builds tolerance. Do that daily and your capacity expands. Tolerance creates toughness. Now listen carefully. Seeking relief feels smart in the moment, but it creates a dangerous pattern. The brain learns discomfort equals escape. Then the threshold for discomfort gets lower. What used to be tolerable becomes unbearable. That's how people become fragile. The opposite is also true. When you delay relief, the brain learns safety. This is uncomfortable but survivable. That belief is strength. You don't need their permission to sit in discomfort. Not your mind's, not society's. You choose. Here's a powerful rule. Do not seek relief until the task is complete or the time block ends. Completion earns relief, not discomfort. That rule changes everything. Work first, relief second. Presence first, escape last. That's discipline. It's not about punishment, it's about sequencing. Relief is not removed, it's delayed. Delayed relief builds tolerance. Tolerance builds strength. That's the key. Let's talk about emotional discomfort. Someone criticizes you, someone disappoints you, something doesn't go your way. The urge is to vent, to explain, to defend. That's relief seeking. Instead, pause. Let the emotions sit. Don't suppress, don't explode, just tolerate. That tolerance rewires you. The next time, the emotion is weaker because the brain learned you don't need to escape. Tolerance creates toughness. Say it again. Tolerance creates toughness. Now let's talk about quitting. Quitting is relief. It removes pressure instantly. That's why it's tempting. But every quit trains the same lesson. I escape when it's hard. That lesson compounds. Strong people don't never quit. They quit less often, and they quit later. They push the exit further away. That's tolerance. You don't need to suffer endlessly. You need to stay slightly longer. That's the training zone. Let's make this practical. Identify one area where you escape too quickly. Work, exercise, conversation, emotion. Now choose one simple rule. When it gets uncomfortable, I stay 2 minutes longer. That's it. No heroics, no intensity, just tolerance. That small extension repeated daily will change you, because tolerance compounds quietly. It's not about pain, it's about discipline. Discipline stays when quitting is easier. That's strength. Now understand this. Comfort seeking is seductive. It feels like self-care. But real self-care is resilience. Resilience lets you face life without breaking. Comfort makes you dependent. Dependent people are fragile. Independent people are tolerant, and tolerance is trained. You have a choice. Seek relief now or build tolerance for later. One feels good, the other makes you powerful. Choose power. Tolerance creates toughness. Let that phrase become your anchor. When you feel the urge to escape, stay. When you want relief, delay. When you want to quit, extend. You don't need their permission to become resilient. You need patience with discomfort. You've learned to control emotion. You've learned to delay relief. But there's still one thing that breaks people under pressure. Chaos, disorganization, lack of structure. Weak moments don't destroy you. Weak systems do. You've built internal strength. Now you must build external support. Chapter 10. Weak moments expose your systems. You don't fail because you're weak. You fail because your systems are weak. Say that again. You don't fail because you're weak. You fail because your systems are weak. That's the key. When people fall apart, they blame character. They blame motivation. They blame confidence. Wrong target. Weak moments don't destroy you. They reveal you. They reveal what you built to support yourself when emotions collapse, and most people built nothing. You have a choice. You always do. You can rely on willpower, or you can rely on systems. Willpower is emotional. Systems are mechanical. One disappears under pressure. The other shows up every time. Systems carry you when emotions collapse. Repeat it. Systems carry you when emotions collapse. Let's get brutally honest. When you're tired, stressed, or overwhelmed, you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your systems.
If your system is chaos, you fall into chaos. If your system is structure, you fall into structure. That's how this works. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Discipline builds systems so you don't have to think when thinking is hardest. Most people try to be strong in weak moments. That's backwards. Strong people design their lives so weak moments are already handled. That's maturity. Here's what weak moments look like. You wake up tired. Your schedule is unclear. Your priorities are fuzzy. Your environment is distracting. So you drift. That's not weakness, that's a system failure. No clear wake routine, no defined first action, no protected focus block. So emotion takes over. Systems remove decision fatigue. Decision fatigue is the real enemy. Every decision costs energy. What should I do now? Should I rest or push it? What's the priority? Those questions drain you. Systems answer them in advance. You don't decide, you execute. That's the key. Strong people do not wake up and negotiate with the day. They follow a script. Wake time, movement, focus block, break, repeat. No debate. You don't need their permission to be structured. Not your friends, not your families, not your egos. Structure is not boring. Chaos is expensive. Let's break this down practically. A system is not a complicated plan. It's a default behavior. What you do automatically when you don't feel like doing anything. If your default is scrolling, that's your system. If your default is movement, that's your system. If your default is avoidance, that's your system. You already have systems, they're just not designed. And undesigned systems are dangerous. Systems carry you when emotions collapse. Now let's talk about consistency. People say, I'm inconsistent. No, your system is inconsistent. Consistency is not a personality trait, it's a structural outcome. If your environment cues the same behavior daily, you look consistent. If your environment is random, you look unstable. Design beats motivation. That's the key. Here's a real-world example. Two people both feel burned out. One has no routine, no clear next step, so they disengage completely. The other has a minimum system. Wake, walk, 10 minutes of focused work, stop. Even on bad days, that system runs. 6 weeks later, one person is stuck, the other is stable. Not because one felt better, but because one had structure. It's not about weakness, it's about discipline. Discipline externalizes strength. Instead of demanding strength from your emotions, you embed it into your systems. Now let's address a critical mistake.
Chapter 11. Isolation is a strength multiplier. Isolation is not weakness. It is leverage. Say it clearly. Isolation is leverage. Strong minds spend time alone. That's the key. Most people fear being alone with their thoughts, so they drown them out. Noise, messages, opinions, endless input. They call it connection, but it's dependency. And dependency weakens you. You have a choice. You always do. You can borrow clarity from others, or you can build it yourself. One keeps you reactive. The other makes you independent. Strong minds spend time alone. Let's clear something up immediately. Isolation is not loneliness. It's not rejection. It's not avoidance. Isolation is intentional withdrawal for the purpose of thinking clearly. Loneliness is wanting company. Isolation is choosing clarity. Big difference. Most people never hear their own thoughts. They hear echoes, other people's expectations, other people's fears, other people's definitions of success. That noise becomes their inner voice, and then they wonder why they feel lost. That's the key. When you are constantly connected, you are constantly influenced. Influence shapes emotion. Emotion shapes decisions. And suddenly, you're living a life you never consciously chose. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Discipline creates space. Space creates clarity. Clarity creates strength. Strong minds spend time alone. Now let's talk about emotional independence. If your emotional state depends on feedback, approval, or reaction, you are not in control. You are rented. Every notification pulls you. Every opinion shakes you. Every comparison destabilizes you. That's not strength. That's exposure. Isolation trains emotional independence. Because when you are alone, there is nothing to react to. No applause. No criticism. No comparison. Just you. And that's uncomfortable at first. Good. Discomfort reveals dependency. And dependency must be broken before strength can be built. You don't need their permission to step back. Not your friends, not your families, not societies. You are allowed to go quiet. Here's a real-world example. Two people face the same problem. One immediately asks for opinions. They get 10 answers. They feel more confused than before. The other goes silent. They write. They think. They reflect. One reacts. The other decides. 6 months later, their outcomes are different. Not because one was smarter, but because one thought without noise. Strong minds spend time alone. That's the key. Isolation forces responsibility. When no one is around, there is no one to blame, no one to impress, no one to hide behind. Just decisions. That's where strength grows. Most people avoid isolation because it removes distractions. And without distractions, you face yourself, your doubts, your inconsistencies, your unfinished commitments. That confrontation is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Because you can't fix what you refuse to face. It's not about fear, it's about discipline. Discipline sits still. Let's talk about thinking. Real thinking requires silence. Not scrolling, not listening, not consuming. Thinking. Thinking is slow, quiet, uncomfortable. That's why few people do it. But thinking is where clarity is born, and clarity is strength. You don't need their permission to disconnect from noise. Noise does not equal relevance. Silence equals control. Strong minds spend time alone. Repeat it. Strong minds spend time alone. Now here's how to apply this practically. You don't isolate forever. You isolate intentionally. You schedule solitude. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour. No phone, no input, no distraction. Just a notebook or a walk. And one question. What do I actually think? Not what you've been told, not what's popular, not what's expected. What you think. At first, the mind resists. It reaches for stimulation. Stay. That resistance is training. Isolation is a strength multiplier because it sharpens decision-making. When you know what you think, you move faster. You don't hesitate. You don't seek validation. You don't over-explain. That's power. You have a choice. Consume constantly or think deliberately. One scatters you. The other centers you. That's the key. Now let's address a fear. People think isolation makes them miss opportunities. Wrong. Noise makes you miss opportunities because you're distracted. The strongest opportunities require focus. Focus requires silence. Silence requires discipline. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Discipline creates solitude so your mind can reset. And when your mind is reset, your emotions stabilize. You stop reacting to everything. You stop chasing approval. You stop comparing. That emotional independence is mental strength. Strong minds spend time alone. Here's another rule. If you feel overwhelmed, your input exceeds your capacity. Reduce input, not effort, not discipline. Input.
Isolation is how you reset capacity. Silence is how you recalibrate. Now here's the command for this chapter. Schedule daily solitude. Non-negotiable. Even 10 minutes counts. No phone, no music, no content. Just thinking. At first, it will feel pointless, then uncomfortable, then powerful. Because your thoughts will slow, your priorities will clarify, your emotions will settle. That's the multiplier effect. You've learned to build systems. You've learned to tolerate discomfort. You've learned to control emotion. Now you've learned to create silence. But there is one final illusion that keeps people mentally weak. They think confidence creates action. It doesn't. Standards do. You don't rise to confidence. You fall to standards. And if your standards are low, your life reflects it. You've built strength internally. You've protected it externally. Now it's time to lock it in with the only thing that never fluctuates.
Chapter 12. You don't rise to confidence, you fall to standards. Confidence is unstable. Standards are permanent. That's the key. Most people wait to feel confident before they act. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel sure. And while they wait, nothing changes, because confidence fluctuates. It rises, it crashes, it disappears under pressure. Standards do not. You don't rise to confidence, you fall to standards. Say it again. You don't rise to confidence, you fall to standards. You have a choice, you always do. You can build your life around emotions, or you can build it around standards. One is unstable, the other is unbreakable. Confidence asks, how do I feel today? Standards ask, what is required no matter what? That difference determines your outcome. Let's be clear. Confidence is a byproduct, not a prerequisite. You don't act because you feel confident. You feel confident because you acted according to your standards. When standards are low, behavior drops. When standards are clear, behavior stabilizes. It's not about fear, it's about discipline. Discipline enforces standards when emotions try to lower them. That's the key. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your life reflects what you tolerate. Late nights, missed commitments, inconsistent effort, excuses. Those aren't personality traits, they're tolerated behaviors. And whatever you tolerate becomes your standard. Strong people don't have higher confidence, they have higher standards. They don't ask, do I feel like it? They ask, is this acceptable? That question changes everything. You don't need their permission to raise your standards, not your friends, not your families, not society's. Standards are personal. Here's how standards actually work. When pressure hits, you don't perform at your best, you perform at your minimum acceptable level. That level is your standard. If your standard is optional effort, you collapse. If your standard is follow-through, you endure. That's the difference. Confidence might disappear. Standards remain. Raise your standards, not your emotions. Repeat it. Raise your standards, not your emotions. Let's look at a real-world example. Two people face the same hard day. One says, I'm not feeling it today. They lower effort, they skip steps. The other says, this is still required. They adjust pace, but they don't abandon the standard. One feels justified, the other builds strength. Weeks later, the gap is obvious, not because one felt better, because one had standards. Standards remove negotiation. Negotiation weakens you. Every time you negotiate with discomfort, you lower the bar. And once the bar is low, your behavior follows. Strong people remove negotiation. They pre-decide what's acceptable. Sleep standard, work standard, behavior standard, response standard. They don't revisit these daily, they live them. That's the key. Now listen carefully. Standards don't require intensity,
They require consistency. You don't need to do more. You need to tolerate less nonsense, less excuses, less delay, less emotional reasoning. Raise your standards quietly. No announcements, no speeches, just enforcement. You don't need their permission to enforce standards in your own life. Here's the dangerous lie. People think high standards mean perfection. Wrong. High standards mean minimums. Minimum effort, minimum follow-through, minimum respect for your commitments. You can have bad days, but not 0 days. That's a standard. You can be tired, but not undisciplined. That's a standard. You can struggle, but you don't quit. That's a standard. Standards protect you from self-betrayal. Confidence can't do that. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Discipline enforces standards when emotions try to lower them. Now let's talk about tolerance. What you tolerate trains your future behavior. If you tolerate excuses, you get more excuses. If you tolerate mediocrity, you normalize it. If you tolerate disrespect from yourself or others, you invite it. Strong people are intolerant of certain behaviors, not harsh, clear. Clear standards create calm because there's no debate. This is how I operate. End of discussion. That clarity reduces stress. Most anxiety comes from inconsistency, not knowing what you'll do, not trusting yourself to follow through. Standards fix that. You have a choice. Lower standards to feel better, or raise standards to become better. One gives short-term relief, the other gives long-term control. Raise your standards, not your emotions. Let that phrase anchor you. Now, here's how you apply this immediately. Identify 3 areas where you rely on confidence: work, health, behavior. Replace confidence with standards. Instead of "I'll work when I feel focused," said "I work from 9 to 10 no matter what." Instead of "I'll train when I feel motivated," said "I move daily, minimum 10 minutes." Instead of "I'll speak up when I feel brave," said "I speak honestly and calmly." Those are standards. Standards don't argue, they execute. And execution builds confidence later. Confidence follows evidence. Evidence comes from standards upheld. That's the key. Strong people trust themselves because they keep promises to themselves. Weak people don't and then wonder why confidence is low. Confidence is earned. Standards are chosen. Choose standards. You don't need their permission to demand more from yourself. Demanding more is not self-hate, it's self-respect. And self-respect is mental strength. You've built discipline. You've built systems. You've built tolerance. You've built silence. Now you've built standards. But there is one final enemy of standards: excuses. Excuses erode standards quietly. They sound reasonable, they feel justified, and they destroy progress. You've learned how to set standards. Now you must learn how to eliminate the one thing that makes standards meaningless. You've raised the bar. Now it's time to remove excuses completely.
Chapter 13. Weakness ends when excuses end. Excuses feel safe. Progress does not. That's the key. Excuses protect comfort. They protect ego. They protect the story you tell yourself. They do not protect results. Weakness does not end when life gets easier. Weakness ends when excuses end. Say it again. Weakness ends when excuses end. You have a choice. You always do. You can explain, or you can execute. One keeps you comfortable. The other gives you control. Here's the truth most people avoid. Every excuse sounds reasonable. That's why it works. I'm tired. I'm busy. I don't have support. It's not the right time. All believable. All accepted. All destructive. Excuses don't announce themselves as lies. They present themselves as logic. That's why they're dangerous. No excuses. Only outcomes. Repeat it. No excuses. only outcomes. Outcomes don't care why you failed. They only reflect what you did or didn't do. It's not about flaw. It's about discipline. Discipline removes explanation from the equation. It replaces it with responsibility. Responsibility restores control instantly. That's the key. The moment you say, "This is my responsibility," power returns. Not tomorrow, not later, instantly. Because responsibility gives you options. Excuses remove them. When you excuse, you surrender control. You hand it to circumstances, to people, to timing. When you take responsibility, you take control back. Even if the situation isn't your fault, the response is still your responsibility. Strong people understand this. Weak people debate it. Let's be clear. Taking responsibility is not self-blame. It's self-ownership. Blame looks backward. Responsibility looks forward. Blame asks, "Whose fault is this?" Responsibility asks, "What's the next move?" That question builds strength. You don't need their permission to take responsibility. Not your parents, not your bosses, not your pasts. You decide. Here's how excuses actually work. They delay action. They lower standards. They normalize inconsistency. One excuse becomes two. Two become a pattern. The pattern becomes identity. I'm someone who doesn't follow through. That identity is built one excuse at a time. But the reverse is also true. One decision to drop excuses can change everything. Because responsibility compounds. No excuses, only outcomes. Now let's expose the most common excuse. I'll start when things calm down. They won't. Life does not calm down. You get stronger. Waiting for calm is an excuse dressed as patience. Another common excuse: I don't have time. Time is not found. It's allocated. If something matters, time appears. If it doesn't, excuses appear. That's the truth. It's not about circumstances. It's about priorities. And priorities are proven by behavior. Excuses reveal what you tolerate. Discipline reveals what you value. That's the key. Here's a real-world example. Two people face the same setback. One explains it away. They justify. They vent. The other says, "That's on me." What's next? Same problem. Different response. Outcomes diverge. Responsibility restores control instantly. Now listen carefully. You don't need to eliminate every excuse at once. You need to eliminate one. The one you use most. Identify it. The phrase you repeat. The reason you lean on. Now challenge it. Ask one question. What would I do if this excuse didn't exist? Do that. That's discipline. Discipline is action without explanation. No speech. No justification. Just execution. That's the key. Let's talk about honesty. Excuses survive in vague language. Things came up. It was complicated. I wasn't in the right headspace. Vague language hides responsibility. Strong people speak precisely. I chose not to. I didn't prioritize it. I avoided it. Those statements hurt, but they heal. Because honesty creates leverage. Once you tell the truth, you can change the behavior. You can't fix what you excuse. You don't need their permission to be brutally honest with yourself. You need courage. And courage is built through repetition. No excuses. Only outcomes. Say it again. No excuses. Only outcomes. Now here's the behavioral command. For the next 7 days, do not explain missed actions. Not to yourself,
not to others. Just note the miss. Adjust the system. Move on. No story. Stories keep excuses alive. Action kills them. It's not about guilt. It's about clarity. Clarity is strength. Now understand this. Excuses feel good now. They feel terrible later. Discipline feels uncomfortable now. It feels powerful later. Choose your discomfort. You have a choice. Protect comfort or build strength. One weakens you quietly. The other hardens you steadily. Weakness ends when excuses end. And when excuses end, something shifts. Your words become fewer. Your actions become louder. Your confidence becomes real. Because real confidence comes from keeping promises to yourself. Not from motivation, not from emotion, from discipline. You've raised standards. You've removed excuses. But there is one final refinement. The strongest people don't argue. They don't explain. They don't perform. They move quietly. They let results speak. You've learned to eliminate excuses. Now you must learn the final discipline. The one that protects everything you've built. Silence. Chapter 14. Mental strength is quiet. Real strength doesn't announce itself. It doesn't posture. It doesn't explain. It moves. Quietly. That's the key. Most people confuse noise with power. They talk about plans. They broadcast intentions. They seek recognition before results. And then they burn out. Mental strength is quiet. It doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't need applause. Quiet discipline wins. Say it again. Quiet discipline wins. You have a choice. You always do. You can be loud and inconsistent, or silent and relentless. One feels important. The other becomes powerful. Here's the truth most people don't like. If you need to announce what you're doing, you're not doing enough yet. Because real progress speaks for itself. Strong people don't explain their discipline. They don't argue for their standards. They don't justify their routines. They just repeat them, day after day, without commentary. That silence is not secrecy. It's focus. That's the key. Noise leaks energy. Every explanation drains you. Every argument distracts you. Every performance costs you attention. Quiet protects energy. And energy is what discipline runs on. It's not about flaw. It's about discipline. Discipline doesn't seek validation. It seeks results. Let's look at the pattern. Loud motivation spikes quickly. It feels powerful. It feels convincing. Then it fades. Silent consistency grows slowly. It feels boring. It feels invisible. Then it compounds. One creates momentum for a day. The other creates identity for life. Quiet discipline wins. Now listen carefully. Silence is not passivity. It's precision. When you stop talking, you start observing. You notice patterns. You notice distractions. You notice what actually matters. Talking keeps you reactive. Silence makes you deliberate. Strong people speak less because they think more. They don't waste words trying to convince others. They don't need approval to stay committed. You don't need their permission to stop explaining yourself. You owe no one a performance. You owe yourself consistency. That's the key. Here's a dangerous habit to break.
Chapter 15. Become the person who doesn't quit. Quitting is not an action. It's an identity decision. Read that again. Quitting is not something you do once. It's something you become, one decision at a time. That's the key. Identity is not declared. it is earned, and it is shaped by repeated behavior. Every time you stay when quitting is easier, you rewrite who you are. Every time you don't quit, you reinforce a new identity. I don't quit. That's who I am. Say it out loud. I don't quit. That's who I am. You have a choice. You always do. You can quit today and protect comfort, or you can stay and protect identity. One gives relief, the other gives power. This chapter is not about motivation. It's about permanence. Motivation fades. Identity remains. People who don't quit are not special. They are consistent. They don't rely on willpower. They rely on self-definition. And once identity locks in, behavior follows automatically. That's the key. Let's expose the real reason people quit. They quit because quitting still fits their self-image. I'm someone who tries. I'm someone who struggles. I'm someone who burns out. So quitting feels normal. But the moment you change the identity, quitting creates friction. I don't quit. Now quitting feels wrong. That's how identity works. It's not about pain, it's about discipline. Discipline creates identity through repetition. You don't wake up one day and become unbreakable. You become unbreakable by refusing to break over and over again, in small moments, quiet moments, unseen moments. Those moments matter most because identity is built in private. You don't need their permission to decide who you are. Not your pasts, not your failures, not your emotions. You decide. Now, listen carefully. Becoming someone who doesn't quit does not mean you never rest. It does not mean you never adjust. It does not mean you never change strategy. It means you never abandon the standard. You can slow down, but you don't stop. You can pivot, but you don't quit. You can struggle, but you don't disappear. That distinction matters. Strong people don't cling to methods. They cling to identity. Methods change. Identity stays. That's the key. Here's how identity is rewritten, one decision at a time. Not dramatic, not heroic, just consistent. You wake up tired, you show up anyway. You feel discouraged, you stay in the process. You want to escape, you extend instead. Each time you do this, you cast a vote for the person you are becoming. And identity is simply the sum of those votes. I don't quit. That's who I am. Repeat it. Now, let's talk about pressure. Pressure exposes identity. When things are easy, everyone looks disciplined. When things get hard, identity decides. If your identity is fragile, pressure breaks you. If your identity is solid, pressure sharpens you. Pressure is not the enemy, it's the revealer. That's the key. Most people try to avoid pressure. Strong people use it. They see pressure as confirmation. This is where identity is tested, and they stay. Not because it feels good, but because it feels right. Right according to who they are. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Discipline aligns behavior with identity until identity becomes automatic. Now, here's the most important shift. Stop asking, what should I do? Start asking, what would someone who doesn't quit do? That question bypasses emotion. It gives direction instantly. Someone who doesn't quit shows up tired. Someone who doesn't quit keeps promises, small but kept. Someone who doesn't quit finishes what they start. That's the model. Live into it. You don't need their permission to adopt this identity. You don't need proof. You create proof through behavior. Now, let's make this practical. Create one non-quitting rule. Just one. Examples. I never miss 2 days in a row. I finish what I start for 10 minutes minimum. I don't leave tasks unfinished intentionally. Simple, clear, non-negotiable. That rule becomes identity scaffolding. When emotion tries to pull you away, the rule holds you. That's discipline, and discipline builds identity. Now understand this. The identity of someone who doesn't quit is not loud. It doesn't brag. It doesn't announce. It simply shows up again tomorrow. Quiet, consistent, relentless. That's strength. And once this identity locks in, life changes. You trust yourself. You move faster, you hesitate less, because you know you won't quit on yourself. That trust is priceless. Most people don't lack ability, they lack self-trust. Self-trust is built by keeping promises to yourself. Every promise kept says, I can rely on me. Every quit says, I can't. Choose carefully. You have a choice. You always do. You can quit today and protect comfort, or you can stay and protect identity. One gives relief, the other gives power. I don't quit. That's who I am. Let that sentence become final, not motivational, foundational. You've learned to stop waiting. You've learned to train under pressure. You've learned discipline without motivation. You've learned silence, systems, standards, tolerance. Now it all converges here. Identity. Mental strength is not a mood. It is a self-image enforced by action. And once you become someone who doesn't quit, everything else becomes easier. Not because life gets lighter, but because you get stronger. This audiobook doesn't end your work, it defines it. You don't need permission, you don't need confidence, you don't need motivation. You need discipline, you need repetition, you need identity. And now you have it. You have a choice. Make it permanent. You don't quit. That's who you are. Mental strength is not built in theory. It is built in action, in silence, in repetition. You now understand the truth. You don't need confidence. You don't need permission. You don't need motivation. You need standards. You need discipline. You need to decide again and again and again. Every time you feel weak, you have a choice. Quit or train. React or control. Escape or endure. Choose discipline. Choose silence. Choose strength. And when this audiobook ends, that's when the real work begins. Subscribe, not for entertainment, for discipline, for clarity, for control. If you're done reacting and ready to train your mind, this channel is where you stay.